Hi, girls and boys. It's Mrs. Kiefer. Today I will be reading a story titled The Dot. Now, The Dot is realistic fiction, which means this story could happen in real life. Let's take a look at the author, Peter H. Reynolds. There he is, right there. It took Peter H. Reynolds a year and a half to write The Dot. He named his character Vashti after a young girl he met at a coffee shop. Mr. Reynolds wrote Ish as a follow up book to The Dot. So before we begin the story, there are a few things we are going to look at while we are reading. The first one is figurative language. Now, sometimes authors use words that have more than one meaning, kind of like the phrase, let's hit the road. It doesn't really mean to smack the road, it means let's get moving. Stories like Amelia Bedelia have a lot of figurative language. So, figurative language is the first thing we're going to be looking at. The second thing we're going to do after we read the story is we're going to compare and contrast. And that's where we tell how things are alike and different. And the third thing we're going to be looking at is the problem and the solution, which we know all about in our fiction stories. So let's get started. The Dot by Peter Reynolds. Art class was over, but Vashti sat glued to her chair. Her paper was empty. There's that figurative language, boys and girls, glued to her chair. I don't think somebody really put Gorilla Glue on the bottom of her chair so that she couldn't get out of it. Glued to her chair just meant that she was not moving. Here we go. Next page. Vashti's teacher leaned over the blank paper. Ah, a polar bear in a snowstorm, she said. Very funny, said Vashti. I just can't draw. Her teacher smiled. Just make a mark and see where it takes you. Wow, look at that illustration. Look at Vashti there. Look at her face. Look at those red colors. Yikes, that doesn't look like she's very happy. In fact, she looks angry. Vashti grabbed her marker, gave the paper a good strong jab. There! The teacher picked up the paper and studied it carefully. Hmm. She pushed the paper toward Vashti and quietly said, Now sign it. Vashti thought for a moment. Well, maybe I can't draw, but I can sign my name. The next week, when Vashti walked into art class, she was surprised to see what was hanging above her teacher's desk. It was the little dot she had drawn, her dot, all framed in swirly gold. Hmm, I can make a better dot than that. She opened her never before used set of watercolors and set to work. Vashti painted and painted. A red dot, a purple dot, a yellow dot, a blue dot. The blue mixed with yellow. She discovered that she could make a green dot. Vashti kept experimenting. Lots of little dots in many colors. If I can make little dots, I can make big dots too. Vashti splashed her colors with a bigger brush and on bigger paper to make bigger dots. Vashti even made a dot by not painting a dot. At the school art show a few weeks later, Vashti's many dots made quite a splash. There's some figurative language here again, boys and girls. Vashti's many dots made quite a splash. Does that mean that her dots were actually getting people wet? No, it means that people really liked them and they were very popular. So let's take a minute to think about how Vashti feels right now. Look at her face. Look at how she's standing up, holding her notebook. She looks happy and maybe even proud. That's very different than how she felt before, when she was angry and glued to her chair and stabbing her pencil onto the paper to make a dot. Very different. Vashti noticed a little boy gazing up at her. "You're a really good artist. I wish I could draw," he said. "I bet you can," said Vashti. "Me? No, not me. I can't draw a straight line with a ruler." Vashti smiled. She handed the boy a blank sheet of paper. "Show me." The boy's pencil shook as he drew his line. Vashti stared at the boy's squiggle, and then she said, "Sign it." And that's the end. So during this story, we did talk about the figurative language glued to her chair, how her paintings made a splash. We also talked about how Vashti changed. We compared how she felt at the beginning of the story, where she was angry and not feeling like she could draw, to the end of the story, where she felt good about her drawings and was actually helping someone else to find how that they could do their own art. And then the last thing I want to talk about is the problem and solution. The problem was that Vashti didn't think she could draw. In fact, she was kind of angry and upset about it. But by the end, the solution was that she tried and practiced, and by the end, she was able to get really good at it. So, those were the three things we looked at, boys and girls: the figurative language, the problem and solution, and the comparing and contrasting. And that's the end of our story. I miss you all, boys and girls, and I hope to get to see you very soon.